Well, it is finally match week 2022 MLS opener coming up this weekend for Austin FC. That means first ever meeting against FC Cincinnati. Their TV voice joins us in Tom Gelehrter. Tom, great to have you with us. Of course, Tom, not just the voice of the MLS side, but you've been their voice since day one.
Since day zero
with USL.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is year 7 for Kevin and myself on the broadcast, our producer David Ashbrook. So we're lucky that we've been able to tell the story since that first game in April of 2016 and see things through to today. So it's really exciting to get down to Austin. Austin's a town I've never been to, so a new city for me, a new MLS stadium, obviously, a new team to the league, and a first ever meeting between these clubs. So I'm really excited not only to get the season going here, coming off the shortest off season in MLS history, but also to get it started with some familiar faces, at least on the broadcast side, and then also, like I said, another expansion team in MLS.
Yeah, before we dive into what to expect for the 90 minutes when they get together at Q2 Stadium on Saturday, just wanted to dive into your story a bit. You mentioned storytelling. Obviously, a lot of play-by-play announcers consider themselves storytellers. You literally told the story of how FC Cincinnati came to be ultimately as an MLS franchise, since you figured that was the best way to spend your pandemic when the season went on pause. You and a variety of others were able to dive into that.
It was kind of a wild story, and it didn't start as a 90-minute documentary. I'll tell you that much. And it's interesting. We learned a lot with myself and the production crew as we put that together. But it literally starts at a conversation in April of 2020 of how can we continue to tell the story of the club? That's what everybody was doing, right? Everybody's trying to figure out how can we continue to push forward. I'm sure in Austin they're like, how can we continue to sell tickets when nobody's having sporting events? We're still, they didn't have any games yet, but they were on the horizon. And so everybody's figuring out how can you do different bits of content. So we started as this is going to be five-minute videos.
Yeah.
For social media, right? A 5-part series that'll come out every Friday for 5 straight Fridays, or something along those lines. And that's where we were. And as we sat down and met with my crew, we're like, all right, we can 100% do this. We have all the footage. We've been shooting the team since really the announcement for the USL back in 2015. But it's probably a little bit bigger than this. And then we put together a list of people we wanted to interview, and it was like 30 people long. And, how are you going to do 5-minute videos with 30 different interviews and all these things? And it just kept growing and growing. And our producer on the project and Mark, he kept coming back to me and saying, hey, let's make it into a half-hour show. Let's make it into an hour show. Let's make it into a documentary. Let's get it on TV and all these things. So we were able to get it on local television here in Cincinnati. We're now working on a streaming platform to put it out, on hopefully one of the big worldwide streaming platforms, right? Hoping to have it on a Hulu or a Netflix or something along those lines here in the near future, and that'll be great. But yeah, it really took you from beyond the first day, which would have been August 15th August 12th of 2015, when the club was announced as a USL team, all the way through the MLS announcement and that first MLS inaugural game in 2019, which was a win against Portland at home in the inaugural home opener. So I think it was a pretty cool way to document the beginning of the team, and hopefully we see an uptick in performance and things along those lines, and we can do a follow-up to it in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I hope it does reach a streaming platform that folks outside of the Cincinnati market can watch. I mean, I don't know if you're like me, but I love to follow stories of how soccer teams pursue their MLS dreams. I've witnessed so many markets over the past decade plus plant that seed. Some of them wind up in MLS, and some of them ultimately never see it come to fruition. But obviously, Cincinnati and Austin have been 2 of those success stories along the way.
Yeah, there's no question. Look at the unbelievable fan support, through Austin's first season down there, through what FC Cincinnati went through in 2019, even last year. Like, the performances weren't there at home. That's not a secret to anybody. The club only won 1 home game and 17 opportunities in a beautiful new stadium. Like, that's not good enough. And we've seen changes because of that. And, a turnover at the general manager position, turnover at the head coaching position. And those are things that everybody's hoping will be better this year. But still, the atmosphere on that 17th home match on decision day of 2021 was great. And look, Austin didn't have the season they were hoping, but the atmosphere through 17 home games was awesome. And so I think there's a lot of similarities between the great passion of both of these fan bases.
Yeah, both clubs were among the top 5 in attendance per matchup, each exceeding 20,000 per match. And that's nothing new just for MLS for you all. When you all signed up for USL day one, you show up to your home opener, and when you're on the call, you're looking out at 14,000 plus fans filling a college football stadium there on the campus of the University of Cincinnati.
Yeah, and it was 38 degrees out, and kind of misty rain in the air. So it was like a miserable day. And we looked out there, and wow, this is pretty cool. And it was a great game, and Cincinnati won. And Austin Berry, who's a hometown kid, who's now on the staff, gets the game-winning goal. Hugo Okoli has this amazing, first goal at home, and FC Cincinnati wins. And I think a lot of people are like, yeah, but you know how it goes. You give out a lot of free tickets, a lot of cheap tickets. People aren't going to come back. Well, the next week, there's 19,000 people there for Louisville City on a much nicer day. Okay, well, that's because it was nicer. And it was a rival. Nobody's coming to the next game. And then there's 18,000. And then the team, as a USL team, averages whatever it was, 18,000 that first year. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, like this is for real. And you're outpacing MLS teams as a first-year USL club, right? So all of a sudden, all these pieces of the puzzle come together. And it certainly makes a lot of sense. And then from there, the Open Cup run of 2017 and the USL regular season run of 2018, and then you land in MLS, and here we are, year 7.
Yeah, that memorable USL Open Cup run where you knock off Columbus, and then ESPN wants to come to town to Nippert to watch 30,000 plus as you all knock off Chicago. And then, of course, that final year, you all had the top record of the USL. You feature a young Michael Lahoud, who, of course, these days is in our TV broadcast on the English side. And of course, Adrian Healy was on the call of that U.S. Open Cup match. So I know you mentioned seeing some familiar faces in the press box at Q2 Stadium. Look forward to a little bit of a reunion there, and everybody being able to look back at just how special some of these early years have been. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Look, Adrian obviously was able to call that incredible match with Taylor against Chicago that went to penalties during the Open Cup run of 2017. And then Michael Lahoud comes in the following year, and that's my guy. Like, what a great human, what a fun person to be around. He was always a great person around that team in 2018. He's going to, be familiar. Obviously, he played in the Diamond a lot as a professional, and everyone, that's what they expect to see from Coach Noonan and FC Cincinnati, obviously in his head coaching debut. We'll see how it ends up shaking out, but that's what people are expecting. And obviously Michael knows it well, but Michael was a lot of fun to have around. He was a joker, but a great footballer. And, I think sometimes he wishes he still had the boots on, but he's doing a great job for you guys in the booth as well. You took the path of going to college at Syracuse. I think most people by now know you're not the only sports broadcaster who happened to get a degree from Syracuse, but remind me, what's the landscape in MLS like? Do you have some peers in the league? Oh, that's a great question. That's funny. I wasn't ready for that one, but I think I can't think of anybody from Syracuse offhand. Yeah, that's remarkable because, again, Syracuse permeates all sports, all networks, it seems like. But when it came to MLS, you were on the radar, and there wasn't somebody obvious, perhaps in the Northeast somewhere. I don't think I don't think that there's another Syracuse person. So I'm going to carry that torch right now. And if somebody wants to come share it, they can find me. I'm sure they'll be tuned into this. But, it's no, but like my mom said when I was very young, I started talking and I never stopped, right? And not far after that, I figured out I wasn't a great athlete. But I love sports. I had to be around sports. So what was the path, right? And one day I'm watching Inside NBA stuff with Ahmad Rashad, and he's talking about this sportscasters camp out of California. And I told my mom, that's the camp I want to go to. I don't want to go to basketball camp or soccer camp or baseball camp. I want to go to sportscasters camp. I'm 13 years old. Like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go on TV and talk. And let's make that work. And that's what we did, right? So we went out there, and the rest is history. And here we are today. It's there aren't a lot of MLS jobs in this country, and fortunate to have one of them. And very, very grateful for that. Don't take that for granted. But no, and so when I wanted to go to school, I was trying to figure out where I was going to go. First you got to look at where you can get in. And Syracuse, I found my way in. But I went and visited my junior year of high school, and it was April. And little did I know it was the first sunny day they had in probably 6 months. With all the snow you get up in central New York, it was the first sunny day they had. So also everybody's out in tank tops and shorts and running around and having lunch in the quad. I'm like, this place is great. This is where I'm going to school. Look how awesome it is. Little did I know it's only like that once or twice, in April ever.
My junior year, there was 195 inches of snow. So it was a little bit of fool's gold for me, but that's where I wanted to go. And it worked out, and great opportunity, but it sets you up, right? Whether I did women's lacrosse games and women's basketball games, and that set me up for where I am today. And, other people go through there and they do men's basketball, or they do some men's lacrosse, or they do women's lacrosse like me. But all those experiences set you up for the opportunities, that you have later in life. So I'm grateful for that.
You, like a lot of the folks who helped to build FC Cincinnati, already had some Cincinnati connections, whether it be with the Bengals. You and some of your colleagues were over with the Bearcats on campus in their broadcasting department. What led you to the University of Cincinnati, your stop right before hopping over to the MLS side?
Yeah, look, I was at the University of Akron for 4 years out of school. I'm a Cleveland native, so that was an easy job to take out of college, and literally live at home for the first couple of years as I was trying to find a way to make enough money. Calling women's basketball games. Literally, I think the money he was paying me, I was spending on gas driving back and forth from my mom's house down to the University of Akron. But that's the reality of the situation, But you do it, and you learn a lot. And you have a lot of great teams, and you have a lot of fun, and that grew into me doing soccer at the University of Akron, and getting to do some men's basketball games. I was doing women's basketball, and from there I got the job at the University of Cincinnati. So my boss at Akron had gotten the job at UC. He asked me to come down and join him at UC, and I started doing the kind of the same type of things. Right, I was doing some basketball, I was doing some soccer, I was doing some volleyball, I was doing some baseball. Omar Cummings, who's now a club ambassador for FC Cincinnati and was with the club in the first 2 USL years, but obviously had an amazing career with the Reggae Boys and in MLS, about a 10-year MLS career. He was a senior at UC my first year there. I remember the sports information director coming to me and saying, "Man, you got to see this Jamaican kid. He's the best player on the field every night," and he was. And obviously that transpired into a great career in MLS with Colorado and Houston, and then ended up retiring with FC Cincinnati in 2017. But now he's around the club and a club ambassador. So, you get the experiences there. And I was able to call soccer at UC. I called soccer at the University of Akron. We were #1 in the country when I was at the University of Akron. And I was doing soccer. I was like really, when they started to get good, made the Elite Eight that year, lost to the eventual national champion. So, all those experiences lead up to then when the clubs come into USL and people ask me to consult them some things and, help them put a broadcast together with the bones of it. And I said, "Well, who's going to do your play-by-play?" And they said, "Well, we're working on that." I said, "No, you're not. You're done. You got your guy." And, 150 games later or whatever we're at now, here we are.
Yeah, not only do you provide the broadcast, but obviously a part of your company that you formed with Fourth Floor Creative, the production, you were involved in really the logistics of camera positioning and everything a broadcaster could hope for when a new stadium is being built. From your first year in MLS coming into this year, what are the actual developments in what your broadcasts provide the viewers of FC Cincinnati?
Oh, I mean, look, we obviously have vastly improved, the stadium. The home situation is unbelievable. We got the biggest booth in MLS, and I haven't been to Q2 Stadium yet, but I'm pretty confident that we have the biggest booth in MLS because it's massive. Sometimes, we joke about putting a ping pong table in the back or something to get a little game in at halftime or pregame or something like that. But just the amenities of being at TQL Stadium provide for a smoother broadcast. The camera angles are perfect. We did everything by the book, how it's supposed to be for MLS standards. All the camera options in the world that you could dream of. Sometimes we'll enhance the broadcast and bring in a jib and some of those things, the extra toys. We got a beautiful desk down in the one corner that overlooks the stadium. You got the Bailey and all the supporters behind us for the pregame show and the postgame show. And look, it's doing a really good broadcast for 2.5 hours. We're lucky in 2019. We got to travel. Obviously 2020, we made it through 2 road games, and then COVID shut the world down. And when we came back, we weren't allowed to travel. And the first half of last year, that wasn't open back up. But when it opened back up, we went back on the road in July, and we'll be on the road and be in Austin this weekend. And I think, that's not the situation everywhere, and it's unfortunate, right? That's the reality of where the league is at. And as you guys saw last year, some people come in and some people don't. And there's different decisions behind those reasons. But I'm lucky that we've had the support here to do that, and that we had the support, in this COVID era to go back out on the road and to be able to tell that story in person. Because as a broadcaster, your best way to tell the story is to be there in person and to feel it and to smell it and to hear it and to experience it firsthand and not off the screen or something along those lines.
So let's dive into what everybody's excited about. That is opening weekend. Both these franchises had to have unique roster builds for their first years in MLS. You all agreed to join MLS probably a little bit earlier than most franchises would like because you wanted to seize that opportunity. So that's a hurried process for that first roster build. Then you had the pandemic, the same pandemic that was underway when Austin was trying to assemble its first roster. But here we are, as much of a full offseason as you can claim despite the early start to the season. You already have mentioned one of the headlines, new general manager, new head coach. What does that bring in terms of expectations coming into this year?
Well, a lot of Philadelphia cheesesteaks, right? With the guys who've come on, well, or at least I hope so. But obviously, look, there's a union flavor. There's no question about that, and that comes in when you bring in Chris Albright as your general manager, and he was hired in early October, so he was able to evaluate 6-7 games in person to round out the year. And we saw some of the 4-4-2 diamond that they had used in Philadelphia, be experimented with current players. And then, they go through the head coach's search and you land on Pat Noonan, who obviously comes from that setup with Coach Curtin and what they were doing in Philadelphia with a 4-4-2 diamond. So everybody assumes we're going to see a 4-4-2 diamond. And sure, that's probably likely. So that's the first piece of the puzzle, right? You got to have the identity. And that's what lacked sometimes under the previous general manager and the previous head coach, that there wasn't always identity of a system. And I think there's going to be a very clear system here in 2022. And then it's getting a roster right. And there's been obviously some hits and there's obviously been some misses. And so Chris Albright has a tall task of figuring out and navigating the unique rules of Major League Soccer and obviously the salary cap and allocation money and designated player slots and all of those things that are unique to Major League Soccer, right? You don't come from the NFL and have dealt with that. You don't come from anywhere in Europe, in any league in Europe. No matter, you could work in the EPL and you could work in the Bundesliga and everywhere else, right, in Europe, at the highest level, but you never dealt with allocation money there. A cap in the way that Major League Soccer manages it with designated players and so on and so forth. So there's a lot to know when you're coming in that regards. And then you got other GMs who know what it's about, calling you and wheeling and dealing and trying to make moves and gain some of those assets, right? So you have a guy, Chris Albright, who understands it all. And who had a tighter budget to work with in Philadelphia than he'll have, eventually once he has his full roster, salary cap to work with, with his guys. So I think that, certainly they got a good person in Chris Albright to come in and step in and oversee it, and someone with a lot of experience and from a club that had done very well. And then he turns around and looks right back in the offices where he walked out of and finds a guy that knows, and those two get along and know each other very well. So you have that instant synergy between the two of them. So I think those are two big steps, right? And then just getting the whole team and the culture on the same page. And look, that's not going to happen overnight. And I think they acknowledge that. But I think they've had now, 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, whatever it is, since the middle of January to get ready for this moment on Saturday at Q2 Stadium. And it'll be the first step. And there was an article last week, and Chris came out and said, look, it's not a finished product. Certainly not. He's certainly looking for another midfielder or two to join the mix. And will that happen by the game on Saturday? Probably not. But it'll be a work in progress as they work through these first couple of weeks of the season and see what pieces rejoin the club.
Allocation money these days brings just a smile to my face because before there was an actual team on the field, all of our local sports reporters and all of the fans who had podcasts were talking local city government because that was what they had to become experts on how the team was going to actually show up in Austin. And now they're all experts on allocation money, whether it's TAM or GAM, following how Claudio Reyna and Josh Wolf were actually able to build a roster. But for you all, who are maybe 1 or 2 guys returning, and who are some of the new additions that you think your fans are the most excited about?
Well, I think Luciano Acosta obviously is one that had a pretty good season last year. Probably could have been a little bit better, but he certainly led the team in productivity, and we've seen what he's done in Major League Soccer. He can do more. And he had a very good preseason, performed really well in the games for FC Cincinnati. So I think that there's a lot of excitement around him. Obviously, Brenner, if you're going to talk about returning guys, you got to talk about Brenner because of the acquisition fee, right? They paid $13 million to get him in, one of the highest in MLS history. I think it's 4 or 5 right now based on a couple of the moves of late. But he's still one of the highest, is fair to put it, as a statement. And, probably for that dollar figure that he's brought in on, underperformed in the year, right? And look, 2021 was still a strange year. Travel wasn't. It still was not wide open, right? You're thousands of miles away from your home in Sao Paulo. You're a young 21-year-old with a language barrier and not a lot of Portuguese-speaking folks around the club that I think maybe not comfortable all the time, right? And I think they've done a lot of things to make sure he's more comfortable this year. And he just got into camp. So he was a late arrival as they worked out his green card status. So now he doesn't take up an international spot. But I think he's one who can make a big leap, right? And go from his 9 goals of last year and be in double figures and should be in double figures, right? And all of a sudden, if he's at a 15, 16, 17 goal clip, a lot of performances are shifting, right? A couple of those draws are wins, a couple of the losses are maybe draws, and things shift. And then you want to talk about newcomers, let's go to the other side of the pitch. Bringing in Alec Can, I think, is a big addition to the club. I always liked Alec when I watched him in Atlanta. I thought he did a good job there as the backup. Look, you're not going to unseat Brad Guzan unless he has a major injury. But, for a while there, Brad was still being called up to the national team. So Alec would get his spot starts or Brad would get a day off as he was getting older occasionally. And I think Alec is a very serviceable MLS starter. So he's been competing. And we'll see, we don't know yet, but if he's the starter for that job on Saturday, then I think that there's been an improvement in that position. And now all of a sudden, I talked about, look, Brenner gives you more productivity. It gets you a goal or two here and there. That flips a couple of the draws or flips a couple of the losses to a result. Now all of a sudden at the other end, if you're making a couple extra saves, if you're reducing a couple goals allowed here and there, all right, now a couple of those draws are wins and a couple of those losses are draws. And all of a sudden your results change very quickly. And I think that's going to be something really big to look at and to monitor is what happens with the goalkeeping situation. Is Alec the starter? And if he is it showing an improvement that is changing results in the back? And then what is that partnership like with Acosta at the 10 and Brenner as your striker? Whether or not he starts Saturday, we'll see how his fitness is, right? If he's able to go after just rejoining the club and getting to Cincinnati this past Friday. So, we don't know that he's a surefire starter for the game against Austin. But, does he get into that groove where he's a regular scorer and he's going to, challenge to have 15 to 20 goals because that's where he should be?
Well, there are now 28 clubs entering this weekend full of optimism. I'm excited that you get to continue to feed off a great crowd this time at Q2 Stadium. I know you'll probably admit you've been spoiled with the energy over these years from Cincinnati.
Yeah, no doubt.
I'm excited again to see all the Verde and Black close to 21,000 strong on Saturday.
Yeah, me too. Like I said, I've obviously watched a lot of games. You get a lot of national television last year, and I would flip it on sometimes anyways just to check up on my guy Mike LaHood and make sure he was behaving himself over there with Adrian. But look, that's the beauty of it, right? Is atmosphere is like what we see at these two stadiums. And I mean, that was the really sad and disappointing part of the whole COVID era. And look, that's what we had to do. We had to play in empty stadiums for a while. And you guys didn't see that, as not being in the league yet, but you saw it on TV and it was bizarre. And as a broadcaster, it was bizarre. There's a goal and all you hear is, 18 guys on the bench hooting and hollering. So yeah, it is great. And there's no question, like being in the venue and feeding off that energy, like that feeds the broadcast. So I 100% look forward to it.
For the Cincinnati fans who aren't able to make the trek down to Austin, remind them where they can find your live call on Saturday.
Oh yeah, we'll be on Star 64 again, like we have been since the beginning of this club back in 2016. They've been a great partner to us, so we'll be over the air on Star 64 here in Cincinnati on television. We'll be on ESPN 1530 on the radio, and then we stream it in market, I think similar to what you guys do on FCCincinnati.com. So in market, and then obviously the ESPN Plus stream out of market this week will be Adrian and Mike because it's the home team stream. So that's how it works on MLS games. So they'll have that one, and then we're home in week 2. So turn around and then come back for DC United.
And that broadcast locally in Austin, you mentioned Adrian Healy, Michael LaHood on the call. That will stream on the app as well as be on the CW Austin. A reminder to Austin fans, tune in 30 minutes early this year for all those local broadcasts. Yeah. There will be a televised pregame show. In fact, Roger Valdivieso and Sonny Guadarrama, the Spanish TV language broadcasters, will join them at the desk with pregame interviews with coaches and players as well. Tom, I appreciate your time. I know it's a busy week, and we are getting closer to the MLS being back this Saturday.
Yeah, I can't wait. Look, it's really exciting. I gotta look around the house and try to tidy up some projects real quick because my wife knows if I don't get them done this week, then it's gonna be decision day before I have time to really dive in again. But it's so much fun. Like I said, I don't take this for granted, and then lucky to be in that seat, lucky to be in Austin on Saturday, and look forward to finding some good food when I get in on Friday. So I might be hitting you up for some recommendations. It's a quick trip. We're in Friday and out on Saturday night, but I'm gonna eat well while I'm there. I promise you that.
Yeah, weigh yourself before you come here. Weigh yourself after.
No. I don't need that answer. I know how that's gonna look.
All right. Again, Tom Gelehrter, the TV voice, even dating back to day one of the USL era for FC Cincinnati. He'll have the call again on Saturday. A reminder that is a 5:00 Central, 6 Eastern kick at Q2 Stadium in Austin. Tom, appreciate it. Look forward to when we can cross paths.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be soon in Lincoln. Be good, brother.